Christian parenting.
Can I admit that I'm embarrassed, but not really. Not enough to not do this episode. But a little embarrassed to say I didn't really know. All right, I shouldn't put the really. I didn't know about logic. I didn't know about fallacies. I mean, I knew about having debates. I didn't know about having arguments. To me, it was my Western understanding of argument where you're yelling at each other, not necessarily the back and forth type of maybe what we would think debate, which is different than that, I believe. And so it wasn't until about, we'll say 2020-ish, that I became aware of these. Now, I knew about there being psychology and things like propaganda, but I didn't know there were labels and that there were specific different types of fallacies. To me, sometimes I'd hear somebody say something like, it doesn't quite sound right, but I didn't have a label for it. I'm going to admit something to you here in this episode about even those labels and those names and those types of fallacies. But when I became aware of this, I was like, we aren't doing this in homeschool. I have this perfect opportunity. Just like when we began homeschooling, I realized I had this perfect opportunity to share the gospel with them and to weave in our Bible time and our faith into every aspect of our homeschool. And therefore, my kids at this time, 2020-ish, were middle school, high school, and I was like, yeah, we're going to do this. And so we started to integrate it, and you get to benefit from my ignorance in the beginning and the fact that when I started compiling these different resources, I really didn't know what I was doing. But my kind of messing through it and it not being a very great process, you're going to get to benefit from that today. Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast. I am your host, Leigh Nguyen, and today we're going to talk about don't sleep on this. You need to teach your homeschooler logic, and we're going to dive in just a few moments, and I'm going to give you my favorite resources. So make sure you have that pen and paper handy. My family right now, we are deep into summer. It is hot and it is sweaty, but we are getting out there working in the garden. We, meaning I. My vegetable garden is doing very well. We have been enjoying things from it, and my flowers are just a little out of control, but in a really good way. I've been slowly converting my beds to more perennials, so that's less work for me every year, but I still plant some annuals, zinnias that we can enjoy in the summer into the fall, and then I'll do marigolds because I like adding that pop of color for the fall. So that's what I've been doing, in my spare time. So let's get into today's episode now, though. My personal belief, well, I've got a lot of them, but in this regard today I'm going to talk about is that others should benefit from our experiences. Whether those are good experiences or those are bad experiences, I really believe that we should use those and be able to share, maybe not necessarily, it doesn't have to necessarily be teach somebody, but to share our experiences and what we learned through something so that we can provide them with some information and maybe they have a little bit of a leg up and they can have a little bit more information to make a decision. We know that when it comes to our kids, especially as they get to be teens, we try to share some of that wise advice with them from things that we learned and ways that we fumbled during our teen years and the wisdom we have acquired, and they don't always want to listen. But if you're listening to today's episode, I assume it is because you want to learn. You want to hear about some favorite resources, and I'm going to tell you right now that we did this in an order that made it very confusing. So now looking at the different resources that we used, I'm going to let you skip that step of pretty much trying and falling on your face and your kids looking at you being like, I don't know what is, we just went through this whole thing. What is logic? I don't even know. I don't know what this means. And it being a little bit too deep. So let's just say we jumped into the deep end. And I'm going to tell you the deep end is really great. And maybe your kids will be ready to jump right into the deep end, and I will link all of these different resources in the show notes for you. But that means don't go and pause this episode and then go just check out those, because I want to give you a little bit of information. I want to give you the order in which that I would do these if I had a chance for a redo. So I'm going to share with you my, and maybe my kids, I don't know, at the time they weren't always very open, receptive in different years and different resources and different kids. But so this is going to be the order that I would do my favorite logic resources. And I have 3 main ones that I would recommend. Does not mean that there aren't others out there. If there are, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to be able to check it out. You can send me an email and let me know. But then after I share those 3 in the order that I would do them now, I'm going to share with you another resource. It's like a bonus resource, and I'm going to kind of give you some ideas on how you can use that along with or in place of some of these other resources I'm going to share with you. So the first one This was my first introduction to logic to my kids, whether they are in elementary, middle, or high school. This, I don't want to say curriculum, but this resource is good for any of them. If they're in high school, it might be super easier for them. It might be easier for them, not super easier. For them, you'll be able to kind of fly through it. And I really just think that it helps to lay just like that good foundation and a good introduction to it. And many of you have probably heard of this one. And it is the fallacy detective. Very short readings to do each day, introduces you to a bunch of like the main fallacies. Tells you what logic is, tells you why you should need to know this, why it would be good for you to know this, so you could recognize it out in the world, whether it's speaking to people, or it's commercials, or it's online, or it's billboards, or it's in print, such as maybe books or magazines or newspapers. So the fallacy detective is what I would say to do first. Whether you have an 8-year-old, you have a 13-year-old, or a 16-year-old, I would recommend it as a great first resource. If you have a 16-year-old, you might get through this in a month or two or half of the homeschool year and then be able to go into something that's a little bit more in depth. And if you have younger children, you might do the fallacy detective and you might do it for a couple consecutive years because it just takes some time. And I feel like for some people it takes more time. For me, I'll be honest, I mentioned earlier, I'm going to admit something here. I still can't remember the different names of the fallacies. I can maybe hear some, whether it's a person or something, and I'll be like, something's not right about that, and I can kind of pick apart maybe what it is, and I can't quite remember the exact name of it. And somebody could say something like a red herring. I'm like, ooh, which one is that? So when it comes to the labels, I have a block. Like it's just is like I don't know. I go blank. I'm like, I'm not really quite sure what that is. I remember things like appeal to authority. That one's pretty easy for me to remember. But all right. Put me aside. I just want to let you know that if you have a little bit more of a difficult time or this is a very first introduction for you too, the fallacy detective is really a great place to start. Once you go through that, whether that takes you a month or two or that takes you entire homeschool year or you do it maybe a couple years in a row or you do it one year, take a year off and do it the next year, the next one I would recommend would be Master Book's Logic. It was a great book. They pick a couple of, or at least one or two main fallacy or main arguments that somebody might have, and then they rephrase it into the different fallacies. And I think that's really helpful. If there is one topic and you rephrase it into the different, so the appeal to authority and the red herring, whatever that is, and then you say, oh, okay, this is how it sounds different, and that's how they're using this same topic in different types of fallacies. So this off the top of my head, and I'm going to link these resources in the show notes for you. I don't know if it's for middle school, high school, but I would say middle school, high school, and you might even be able to do it. I mean, if it's labeled for elementary, then it is fine to do for all the ages up. It's not too babyish or anything for a high schooler to do. But it might be targeted towards high schoolers, but you might have a 5th, 6th grader that is absolutely fine for. So it's master books. It's not necessarily going to come up with topics. There's nothing going to be inappropriate for a younger student to go through. And let me say, you should be going through this with them. All of these resources, do it with them, especially if you don't know. If you're starting at ground zero like I was, do it with them. Make it a part of your family learning. Maybe it's a part of your family time that you do. I do have some other episodes about that, but I also talk about family time when it comes to your homeschool blueprint. And so this is something that you can definitely include. There is actually a lesson now all about morning time because I wanted to share my process for how I create a morning time and something that has worked for my family for many years. And I don't know, it was just like through trial and error and just kind of my gut a little bit. So I share that also in your homeschool blueprint. You can get more information at littlebythehomeschool.com/blueprint, or the link is in the show notes. Now let's go with number 3. This one that I'm going to share with you is very meaty. And when we did it, it had a video. So maybe it possibly has a video as well. And so I would recommend this after you have done the other resources. And in just a moment, I'm going to share with you an additional resource that can really help to tie it all kind of together, and one that you can kind of do on the fly, a little bit more on the go as well. But the third one I would recommend is The Art of Argument by Classical Academic Press. This one is going to be a lot deeper. And spoiler alert, this is the one that my family started with. Again, I probably my youngest might have been late elementary and then had middle and high school. I don't really feel like doing the math right now, but we just kind of jumped into the deep end. And I am going to say that I think they picked up on more things that I did. I was just, again, that was at a season of life that life was just super overwhelming and trying to remember all of the different type of fallacies. If I was to go back again, this would then be the third one I would do. I would do the fallacy detective as a good introduction. It doesn't go in super deep. Master Book's logic goes in a little bit deeper. And then the art of argument is going to go, it's much more immersive. And so that is the order that I would recommend doing those. So what is this bonus? The bonus is a podcast. And I would suggest you could do just this podcast and listen. Episodes are 5 to 10 minutes long. You could listen in the car. You could also listen to this along with doing one of the other resources. Now, if you are doing the art of argument, I would say maybe don't do this along with it because it might just be too much. And the kid's like, well, I thought we were learning about that. But it is called Filter It Through a Brain Cell podcast. I highly recommend it. Even if I know some of you listen who aren't homeschooling, I actually have plans to continue listening to this so that I can continue hearing about it. She has a resource I did purchase, I think it might have been about $10, that has listed all of the different ones in the order. I think in the resource, they're in alphabetical order, but then also in episode order. And so that was really helpful because after we had listened, that I would go through and kind of read just a little bit of a summary. It was just a sentence or two, and that was just kind of like, okay, yes. And so that we included that. I found it for his last year of homeschool, which was just last year, and we would listen to it for a few minutes just during our time that we would do together. And again, it was good for me to learn, and I think that if you have done a bunch of logic, you could just do this. And I think that it's really helpful to just go back and be like, oh yeah, that's right, I had forgotten about that one. But it's also okay to kind of sprinkle in, or maybe you're just like, I don't want to purchase any more curriculum, but I would like my kids to have some exposure to logic. Because our kids, our Christian homeschool kids, we should be raising such wise children who will become wise adults and providing them with opportunities. Now, they're not going to be as wise as children as they will and they should be as adults, but providing them with the ability to take apart what somebody says and say, no, that is actually false. Doesn't mean that they are always the brave one to be able to do this and to be able to break down somebody's argument. We know from videos that Charlie Kirk was amazing at this. He had such a gift for it. I can see this gift somewhat in my youngest, not nearly what Charlie Kirk was able to do. I don't have the gift. I'm probably, if someone presented me with something, I might just cry. That's just kind of my default. But I can pick apart and say, something just isn't quite right in that. But I think that if we just include this, it is so worth it. That's basically why I'm doing this episode, because it is so worth it. It's not something that you need to add on top of a lot of things. I really think it should be a foundation and a basis for what you're doing in your homeschool. And again, there could be other resources out there that I'm not aware of. These are just the ones that we used, and that's the order that I would highly recommend doing them. And if you are curious as to how does logic fit in and why you shouldn't sleep on it, I mean, again, we just need to be practical. I think it's really a practical thing for kids to know. And again, if they don't know the different types, just being able to stop and say, no, that is false. And be able then also on the other side of it say, God's word says this, and to know the truth. So if they know the truth and they can spot the counterfeit, and not all of us are going to be able to be, not all of us are gifted with that, being able to be very verbose and breaking it down and being level-headed about it, but at least allowing our children to see that everything that people are saying is not always right. It's not always the truth. And I think it'll help them to be more confident in their ability to present the gospel and to walk as salt and light in the world. And so if you're saying, okay, I want to include this in my family time and our morning time, and how do I do this and how do I do the homeschool thing, and I'm just a little bit frustrated, a little bit nervous as we go into our homeschool year, I want to encourage you to go check out your homeschool blueprint. It is for moms if you are just even thinking about homeschooling, or you're going into your first year, maybe you're a couple years in, or possibly you might be 5-10 years in and saying, I'm just kind of reactionary. I'm not being very purposeful. I'm not being intentional. How do I be more intentional? That's what your homeschool blueprint is going to help you to do that, get things set up, and then all you have to do next year, all in air quotes, is to actually do the work. And I'm going to help you come along with having a bigger picture in mind so that each day you get up, you say, okay, I know what I'm doing here, and I know why I'm doing it. You can get all the information at littlebylittleHomeschool.com/blueprint. Always, I try to share as much as I can in the show notes for you as well so that you can take some next steps for everything. Have a great day.